Bon dia, buenos dias, and welcome to this workshop with the title Strategies and Actions for a Nuclear Weapons-Free World. Good morning, grassroots activists and peace workers who are joining us in this workshop, either in person or online. And thank you to all the panelists. I have already said so, but I don't mind saying it again, who have offered to share their views, experiences, and strategies on mobilizing public support and achieving policy changes for the abolition of nuclear weapons in their respective countries, both at national and grassroots levels. First, I'm going to introduce myself since I'm already an activist. My name is Carmen Suñé, and while I'm co-moderating this workshop together with Sato Rieko, I'd like to share with all of you that at present I'm the new chair of the Catalan organization Fundipau, an NGO that since 1983 has taken upon itself that every day there are more people committed to build a world without violence and peace. The pillars of our work are public awareness and political advocacy. And we carry out our objectives by means of peace education programs and disarmament campaigns, among other activities. We have been a partner organization of ICANN since 2010, and we are fully committed to work for a nuclear weapons-free world. Together with Mayors for Peace Catalunya, we launched the Cities Appeal campaign, which has already achieved almost 60 towns, cities signed the pledge. Mayor Josep Mayoral, who is with us here today as a speaker, will tell us more about it. Before we give the floor to the panelists, I'd like to begin by stating a few facts about where the world stands as to nuclear weapons. As you very well know, the issue of nuclear weapons has faced some challenges and successes over the past year. The risk of nuclear weapon use, which would have catastrophic humanitarian consequences, continues to increase and can only be eliminated with the elimination of nuclear weapons. The recent announcement that Australia will acquire nuclear-powered submarines with the assistance of the United States and the United Kingdom is just one recent example of these growing risks to proliferation and disarmament and threatens global health and security. In 2020, nuclear-armed states spent $72.6 million on their nuclear arsenals. All nuclear-armed states are qualitatively expanding their arsenals, and 6 nuclear-armed countries, China, India, North Korea, Pakistan, Russia, and the United Kingdom, are increasing the size of their stockpiles. This is a clear violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty's Article 6 to pursue disarmament for states parties. In recognition of this perilous security situation in Article 6, countries around the world are signing and ratifying the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW. It achieved its 50th ratification in October last year, triggering its entry into force on 22nd of January 2021. The TPNW is a significant step towards a nuclear weapon-free world that all countries should sign and ratify. In this workshop, we will discuss how to change the policies of governments opposing the TPNW based on their belief in nuclear deterrence, which will be the key to achieving a nuclear weapon-free world. All of the speakers joining us today represent the movements in nuclear armed and umbrella states, including the NATO members. And without any further delay, let us listen to the presentation by our distinguished panelists from Sato Rieko. Sato, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Karime. Let me introduce myself. I am Asato Rieko. I'm working at Japan Council against atomic and hydrogen bombs. Just been working for the elimination of nuclear weapons, and I'm working together with Tsuchida Yayoi, one of the panelists today. So in the first part of the workshop, we will listen to the presentation from each panelist about for 7 or 8 minutes to share their work and views and actions. And I announce the order of the presentations. The first speaker is Dave Webb from the UK. Second is Ludo de Bravandel from Belgium. Third is Kim Jin-yeon from the Republic of Korea. The fourth speaker is Ralph Hutchison from the USA. And the fourth is Mayor Josep Mayoral y Artigas of Catalonia, Spain. And the last speaker will be Tsuchida Yayoi from Japan. So I want to introduce the first speaker, Mr. Dave Wave. And he is the chair of the campaign for nuclear disarmament in the UK. And CND is the grassroots movement comprising local groups, regions, and national organizations. Since its founding in 1958, it has worked to achieve a nuclear weapon-free world, especially to make the United Kingdom nuclear-free. He also serves the board of directors of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. And while the panelists are speaking, we ask all of you to write in your comments or questions in the chat box. Okay, so Dave Wave, over to you.
Thank you very much, Reiko. And thank you for the invitation to join the panel. As you say, I'm Dave Webb. I'm here representing the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, or CND, in the UK. As you're probably aware, things are not so good here in the UK at the moment. Following the removal of the UK from the European Union, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been trying to create an image of a global Britain playing an international role. He's clinging to the military coattails of the US by sending warships to the Black Sea and the South China Sea, and has increased military spending, cut welfare and overseas aid, and increased the number of UK nuclear warheads by over 40%. Unfortunately, the leadership of the Labour Party, the main political opposition, raises few objections and continues to support the Trident nuclear weapon system and its replacement, even though the majority of party members strongly support nuclear disarmament. So how do we tackle this situation? Nuclear weapons are hardly ever mentioned in the media, and we have to work in many different ways to engage directly with the public on the imminent threat of nuclear annihilation, and we need to build support from all sectors of society. In the past, we've been able to reach the public through leaflets, street stalls, discussions, and protest demonstrations. However, COVID has forced us from the streets and onto the internet to rally support at a time when the climate emergency has become the major concern of most people. But COVID has also demonstrated how important it is to maintain an efficient and well-resourced health service, and our campaign for nurses, not nukes, emphasizes this point, and we are working to build support and alliances in political parties and trade unions, and with environmental and human rights groups. In January, we commissioned a national poll which showed that 59% of the British public supported the UK government signing up to the TPNW, and that 77% supported a total ban on all nuclear weapons globally. Both propositions had majority support across all ages, all regions, education levels, income brackets, and voting preference. We also had a webinar on Nuclear Ban is Here, What Next?, which discussed ways to get more involved in campaigning. One way is to pressure MPs by arranging meetings with them to discuss the TPNW, and CND is working with friends in Parliament to raise the issue there. MPs are being asked to sign an early day motion calling on the government to support the TPNW. early day motions are submitted by individual MPs to gain support for debate in the House of Commons. We're also conducting a petition calling on the government to get rid of its nuclear weapons and support the treaty. To work on a more local level, we've launched a nuclear ban communities campaign to bypass the government and engage local politicians in supporting the TPNW. We provide information material and draft motions to take to town or city councils and work with mayors for peace to cover as much of the country as possible. Some of the biggest cities in Britain, such as Glasgow, Manchester, Oxford, Edinburgh and Leeds, have now passed motions to support the treaty, and campaigners are working hard to get more towns and cities involved. Individual parliamentarians are also being asked to sign the ICAN Pledge of Support, and so far over 140 members of UK, Scottish and Welsh parliaments have done so, and we're asking city and town councillors to sign the pledge as well. These local politicians are much closer to their communities and more likely to be known personally to supporters. We're also working to gain support from faith leaders and have a separate humanitarian pledge for them. And we will also be holding a webinar to help supporters who are unsure about how to get involved with this campaign. And as part of our annual conference this year, which actually just happened yesterday, we will be holding an online session, sorry, that's next week, on Britain and the TPNW and the need for Britain to look at the legacy of its nuclear weapons testing and how it might sign up to the treaty. We have found that the recent decision by the government to increase the UK nuclear arsenal is increasing support for the TPNW. We've commissioned a legal opinion that confirmed that this is a breach of international humanitarian law and is not compatible with the NPT commitment to pursue negotiations towards disarmament. The recent announcement of AUKUS, the military partnership between the UK, the US and Australia to exchange nuclear-powered submarine technology, is not only a dangerous escalation in the West's ongoing confrontation with China, but is also likely to be another example of an incompatibility with NPT obligations. And a recent online emergency rally against AUKUS with an international panel attracted hundreds of people. CND will therefore be reporting the UK to the upcoming NPT review conference, and we're collecting signatures of support to be presented to the President-designate ahead of the conference. We will be asking NPT state parties to raise concerns about breaches of the NPT and call on the UK and other states in breach of their commitments to immediately halt all policies and activities that undermine the treaty. We are also inviting those outside the UK to join us. Together, as global citizens, we can challenge the nuclear weapon states to take the issue of nuclear disarmament seriously. Every year, peace groups around the country commemorate the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki with ceremonies of remembrance in their towns and cities. Local politicians and mayors are usually invited to join the commemoration ceremonies. It's very important to engage with young people as well, and Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the TPNW also form a major part of CND's peace education program, which engages thousands of school students every year. We offer free workshops and assemblies for teachers, free peace education teaching packs, and other materials for teachers and students. The situation is currently very difficult, but the urgency of our task requires us to work to gain support across a spectrum from citizens to government and to build international unity and solidarity to form an unstoppable global mass movement that will eventually achieve a world without nuclear weapons. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave, for such an insightful view of how grassroots movement in the UK has been fighting against nuclear weapons and arsenals for many, many, many years. And if there's one thing we should learn from this pandemic, as far as activists is concerned, is that it has knitted us together, I think, in a much more closer world now. So I agree with you. The importance here is that we may and should make a global mass movement so that we are heard where we should be heard to stop this madness. Beatrice Finn, who was here for the inauguration of the Congress, she said, she posed one question: why should nuclear weapons be eliminated? And the answer was as simple as, because it simply makes sense. So thank you very much for your speech. And now let me introduce the next speaker, who is in person in the venue. His name is Ludo, sorry, your voice. Exactly. From the Belgian organization FREDE. Let me just say a few things about him. He's a member of this organization, FREDE, which literally means peace in Dutch. Disarm to develop is their motto. Since 1949, they have opposed the militarization of security problems and the diversion of resources to war and armament. They strive for a peaceful and social just international society based on common and human security, where people can meet their daily needs while respecting the capacity of our planet. They are econ partners as well. So now, Ludo, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, and I should add, maybe we're also part of the Belgian Coalition Against Nuclear Arms, which is a platform of 54 organizations like Greenpeace. It's a broader platform and is mainly active, working together concerning nuclear arms. And to add, and Tom is here, we have also recently now a kind of platform to work and act on European level. It's the Free Europe campaign, let's say, that had its first action, but I come later back to that. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak about our actions against nuclear arms in Belgium and Europe, and maybe briefly a small history, because it's important to understand why it's sometimes very difficult to act against nuclear bombs in NATO sharing countries. Belgium is one of the 5 European countries with these nuclear bombs in Europe on its soil, and these nuclear gravity bombs were deployed in the early 60s through a secret agreement, so between Belgium and the US. And until today, the government maintains a policy of ambiguity, neither confirming nor denying the presence of nuclear bombs in Belgium. And so it's blocking any normal parliamentarian debate. However, it's no secret that about 150 US P-61 bombs are deployed in 5 European countries as part of NATO's nuclear sharing policy. So Belgian fighter jets are responsible for employing these nuclear bombs in wartime, as is the case also for Germany, for Netherlands, for Italy, which is in breach with the non-proliferation treaty that prohibits the transfer or the control over nuclear weapons by non-nuclear weapon states, which would be the case in wartime. These bombs will soon be replaced by new P-61-12 nuclear bombs as part of a $10 billion US modernization program. And because of their precision and low yield options, these nuclear weapons are even considered usable, lowering the threshold for a nuclear war, of course. So this all happens without any, and I emphasize that, without any official statement or public debate. And so it's not even discussed in the media, although probably from next year on, we can have these new bombs, but we will never, we don't know. We don't know for sure. So the resistance against nuclear weapons in Belgium has a long history. Probably many people still remember the large mass mobilizations against the installation of nuclear missiles in various European NATO countries in the early 80s. And so my country was one of these countries. And in 20 October 1983, I was still very young, but I joined it. We were 400,000 people in the streets of Brussels marching in what became the biggest demonstration ever in the Belgian history. So it was a very important discussion that time. Despite all the protests, the government back then decided to deploy cruise missiles in '85. However, 2 years later, they were taken back to the US under the ENF treaty agreed between the US and the Soviet Union. And I think it's important because this agreement that unfortunately ceased to exist, as you know, after the withdrawal of the US in 2018 and then later Russia, was made possible due to the massive pressure from the peace movement in Europe and the United States. I think it's important to know that, or that we know that. Some 20 years ago, new actions were taken, now I'm talking about Belgium again, this time against the US nuclear bombs at the airbase in Kleine-Brogen. And during so-called bomb spotting actions, hundreds of activists crossed into the military base of Kleine-Brogen. These are civil disobedient actions. And these actions brought the issue of nuclear bombs in Belgium back to the public and political attention. So in 2005, the Belgian parliament voted a resolution asking the government to take initiatives within NATO to improve the division, to take initiatives within NATO to discuss at least the nuclear task inside NATO. So the many actions of the peace movement ensured that at the beginning of 2010, a Belgian former NATO Secretary General, Willy Klaas, 2 former prime ministers and an ex-minister of foreign affairs made a remarkable appeal in an open editorial calling for the removal of tactical nuclear weapons from Europe. So simultaneously, Belgium, Germany, Norway, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands pledged to call for nuclear-free Europe at the 2010 NATO summit later that year in Lisbon. It was the NATO summit in Lisbon. However, the US and other pro-nuclear weapon states within the military alliance responded by declaring NATO as a nuclear alliance, and in the same summit in Lisbon, in its new strategic concept. And this was new, defining NATO as a nuclear alliance. A move that aimed to collectivize nuclear weapons as an integral part of NATO, and to silence critics by arguing that anti-nuclear weapon positions go against NATO obligations. That's a tricky thing they did in the summit in Lisbon. So with the entry into force, and I step further in time, of the Nuclear Prohibition Treaty, the TPNW, and the planned replacement of the nuclear bombs in Europe by P6112, new opportunities have arisen for the peace movement and needed opportunities. The TPNW is an important milestone in the fight against nuclear weapons. The international peace movement should be credited for. In addition to the anti-nuclear stance of the peace movement is shared by the vast majority of the population. And so various surveys recently, only a year or 2 years ago, show that the majority of the Belgian population doesn't want nuclear bombs in Belgium. According to a survey last year, 77% of the Belgian population wants to join the TPNW. Even when the US would exert pressure, was the question, still 66% of the population would be in favor to join TPNW. This is also the case in Germany, in Italy, in the Netherlands, and all the countries that all host US nuclear arms. The Belgian population's anti-nuclear weapons position was also translated cautiously into the recent government coalition agreement that was approved at the end of last summer, noting that, and I quote, Belgium will play a proactive role in the 2021 NPT review conference. So this had been postponed to 2022, as you know. Together with European NATO allies, we will explore how to strengthen the multilateral non-proliferation framework and how the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons can give new impetus to multilateral nuclear disarmament. So it's a vague, cautiously definition of acting to the prohibition towards prohibition of nuclear arms in the world. Nevertheless, and this is of course policy, realistic policy as they call it, Belgium voted last year against the resolution in the General Assembly of the United Nations last December that welcomed the TPNW and asking countries to accede. So Belgium voted against it, and so did all NATO members. They rejected this resolution. NATO is, since last year, openly and before already openly campaigning against the TPNW and a global nuclear disarmament regime, claiming falsely that it's undermining the non-proliferation treaty. But the pressure from the US and NATO to maintain the nuclear deterrence is huge. So the Belgian government now is divided over the issue. Greens and Social Democrats, which are part in the government in Belgium, want to remove the nuclear bombs and the signature to the TPNW. But the Liberals and Christian Democrats, also part, we have also always big coalitions in Belgium, want us to remain loyal to NATO's nuclear sharing policy. And according to the Greens and Social Democrats, Belgium will play a proactive role at the next NPT review conference, that is what they promise, postponed to the beginning of 2022, and pledge to work within NATO for a new policy on nuclear weapons. But it looks like these parties don't want to get the government into trouble over nuclear weapons. So the peace movement is campaigning to pressure the government to be serious about nuclear disarmament and to sign the TPNW with much local support. So this year, at the initiative of my organization and some others, at the International Peace Day, 21st September, 132 mayors of cities, most major cities, and also municipalities urged the government to remove the nuclear bombs from Belgian territory and to sign the ban treaty. And this summer, we launched also an official petition under the right of petition law to change the law from 1962, because this law made it possible that they make secret agreements for the installation of nuclear bombs, so that the deployment of nuclear weapons in Belgium will at least need a parliamentarian consent. And I think it's normal. It should be normal in democracies that parliaments can discuss and of course can decide on having nuclear bombs in our country. Those actions happened under the umbrella of the Belgian Coalition Against Nuclear Arms, which is a broad alliance, as I told you, of peace movements, environmental and feminist movements, and also trade unions. And this is, I think, also what we should do in general with the peace movement everywhere in the world. The Belgian peace movement participates also actively in the European Nuke-Free Europe campaign against NATO's nuclear sharing policy and for the removal of all nuclear weapons in Europe. And last September, the campaign, so this year, we had a month of action in several countries, in Belgium, in Germany, I think also in Italy, the Netherlands, in the UK, and France, near military bases or in cities calling for nuclear-free Europe. So it's the first time in years that the European peace movement campaigned together to show the unified position. The European peace movement, I think, needs to join forces internationally and locally to increase its impact, and as it was the case in the 80s. Still, even if many of these actions we had in September have been taking place on a modest scale, they are a first important step in expanding the anti-nuclear weapons movement in Europe in a crucial time, as we are witnessing increased international tensions in which more importance is attached to nuclear strategies. And to conclude, for the coming years, I think the peace movement faces the challenge of translating the huge anti-nuclear sentiment among the population. We have the support of the population, even when it's passive, but the challenge is to translate it into major mobilizations and political pressures. So I thank you. Maybe I was too long.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ludo, for a very lively speech on the people's movement. Yes, the public pressure is the key to really move the government, and I think your movement is doing it just that. And I think we can learn a lot from your presentation. Thank you very much. So the next speaker is Kim Jin-young from the Republic of Korea. Jin-young is a full-time organizer at the People's Solidarity for Social Progress, PSSP, of the Republic of Korea, in charge of anti-nuclear peace activities and international solidarity projects. PSSP seeks Marxist alternatives amid the structural crisis of capitalism, and it aims to make innovations in the labor movement and build social movements for women's rights and peace and denuclearization in the Korean Peninsula and East Asia. Okay, so Kim Jin-young, over to you.
It's good to see you all. Since it's evening here actually, so good evening from Seoul. My presentation today is about lessons that we can learn from the situation in Korea as a country stuck between the United States and China. As a country under the US nuclear umbrella and a neighbor of China's, South Korea's situation shows that pursuing peace in the world today requires a detailed understanding of the changes in the US-China relationship. This year, US President Joe Biden said in his address to Congress that China is deadly earnest about becoming the most significant, consequential nation in the world. While Chinese President Xi Jinping warned that any foreign force which dares try to oppress China will find their heads best bloody against a great wall of steel during a celebration of the Communist Party of China's 100th anniversary. This competition between these two countries has a huge impact on East Asia. As part of a strategy to defeat China in the Indo-Pacific region, the US is calling on South Korea to join the Quad and work together to exclude China from the global high-tech supply chain. At the same time, China's military modernization and strengthened military cooperation with Russia and North Korea are triggering military responses from neighboring countries like South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. The CCP is also suppressing democratic opposition in Hong Kong and supporting authoritarian forces in countries like North Korea and Myanmar. Bloc confrontations like those that occurred during the Cold War cannot be the answer to this situation. At the same time, we cannot ignore the strategic competition which is already happening between the US and China. The fact that inter-Korean talks, which had been seen as the Moon Jae-in administration's biggest achievement, led to no substantial denuclearization or disarmament, gives us a lesson that we must remember what our top priorities are if we are to overcome this geopolitical crisis. The Moon administration has had no practical strategy or even a concrete goal to move towards complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Without clear principles and strategies, it has tried to gain both China and the US support for some issues for political ends, but has failed. This has ended up frustrating the Korean people who want peace. South Korea is heading into a presidential election in March of next year. Since the Moon administration's North Korea policy has failed to achieve tangible results, North Korea policy will be one of the main topics during the presidential election. Right-wing candidates are already pledging to strengthen the US nuclear umbrella and the US-Korea military alliance. At this point, it is our joint task to prevent South Korea from moving in a direction that strengthens military tensions in East Asia. I see some hope in the Korean People's Movement, such as the struggle of the legend of Soseong-ri against the United States THAAD, Terminal's high-altitude area defense installation. When the THAAD deployment plan was announced in the last administration, Democratic Party leaders at the time, including Moon Jae-in himself, promised to fully leave the plan if they took power. But the promise was never realized. Ever since, the struggle has continued, regardless of changes in domestic political conditions, with the pursuit of peace as the one and only principle. As is the case with the anti-THAAD struggle, a movement for peace in the era of US-China competition must place the greatest value on non-nuclear peace irrespective of the surrounding political conditions. We should seek progressive alternatives based on this principle at the national and international levels. The entry into force of the TPNW may be the best example of a successful effort in this direction. The treaty will expose the reality that the US and China share nuclear hegemony amid competition and be a means of pressuring them to disarm. Building on our current efforts, it is most important for us to develop concrete alternatives to various concerns that we have discussed today, based on our international solidarity. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Kim Jin-yong. I know that your country is surrounded by major nuclear weapon states, and South Korea is in nuclear alliance with the United States. It's a very similar situation like as in Japan, and it's a very complicated situation, but I know that the people in South Korea are working very hard to make your country nuclear free, despite all these difficulties. And we have worked together with the PSSP and other Korean organizations to hold the International Forum for Nuclear Free Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. And we really cherish the solidarity work that we have had in the past. Thank you very much. So next speaker is Ralph Hutchison of the United States. Yes.
The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear
sorry.
Weapons.
Sorry, Ralph. I want to introduce you. Yes.
Go right ahead.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Yes. So Ralph Hutchison has been the coordinator of the Oak Ridge Environmental Peace Alliance in Tennessee, USA, since 1990. He has coordinated dozens of actions at the Y-12 nuclear weapons complex in Oak Ridge. He has served on federal and state advisory panels on environmental and health issues at nuclear weapons facilities, and serves on the board of directors of the Alliance for Nuclear Accountability and on the coordinating committee of the U.S. Nuclear Ban Treaty Collaborative. He has participated in briefings on nuclear weapon issues in the U.S. Congress and at the United Nations, and his work for peace includes travels in Nicaragua, India, Japan, and Germany. Okay, over to you, Ralph.
Thank you. So the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons has one meaning for people living in the nations that have signed it. It's a binding legal commitment to abide by the terms of the treaty, both the prohibitions and the positive obligations. But for those of us living in nuclear weapons states and non-signatory states, the treaty is something different. It has no legal power, but it is a lever we can use to move our governments, because it has a moral power that does not recognize borders or require signatures. Now, that moral power is effective, though, only if we use it. My government, the United States government, is unmoved by the existence of the treaty. It can only be moved if we insist that the treaty is a moral imperative, a compelling commitment to life without the nuclear shadow. The treaty and those who are advocating for it provide wonderful tools. The focus on the humanitarian impacts of nuclear weapons opens a conversation that has, for the more than 70 years, been limited to claims of security and military necessity. In the age of the ban treaty, we should insist that every conversation about nuclear weapons now, whether by government officials or civil society, must recognize and include the threat of nuclear weapons to human beings and the environment. In the United States, we launched a small effort to recognize and celebrate the entry into force of the treaty last January. It turned out to be much bigger than we expected. More than 100 actions across the country. People are hungry for a new way to talk about nuclear weapons and a new path to disarmament. So we decided to try to turn that moment into a movement. And we have established the Nuclear Ban Treaty Collaborative that has 4 working groups drawing from people and groups across the country. This is not the only work that is being done in the US, but it is one way we are connecting to build our strength and use our resources collectively. One working group is focusing on universities and colleges that have ties to nuclear weapons production. This working group is strongly supported by ICANN. Together, we have launched the University Pledge. Initially, it is for people in US schools, but ICANN is working to expand it. This pledge is a starting point. It can be used to educate students, faculty, administrators, alumni, and others about how their school is contributing to the existential threat of nuclear weapons. Those who sign the pledge are taking a first step. It can also be used by students to address the investments of their school's endowment, to withdraw investments in companies and financial institutions that are building nuclear weapons. The Localities and Legislatures Working Group is working to get cities, towns, and villages, as well as elected officials, to renounce nuclear weapons. This group includes a number of efforts: Back from the Brink, the ICANN Cities Appeal, the Parliamentarians Pledge, Mayors for Peace, and many more. And we have built a database of communities in the United States that have already taken action, and we're working to expand that list. The Days of Action Working Group is creating resources and working to organize collective efforts to elevate the ban treaty. We're starting now to get groups ready for nationwide actions and events on January 22nd of 2022. This working group includes people from nuclear weapons communities across the United States, from military communities, from national organizations like Veterans for Peace, and many others. In August, we worked to make sure that Hiroshima and Nagasaki commemorations included the TPNW and the voices of affected communities: Hibakusha, Downwinders, Pacific Islanders. The 4th working group is the Affected Communities Working Group that is currently developing its focus and its strategy. It's critically important that all the voices be heard as we move toward the abolition of nuclear weapons. But the witness of those who have experienced firsthand the devastating power of nuclear weapons, and those who have been impacted by the mining, milling, production, and testing, must be central to our message about the humanitarian cost of these weapons. These weapons kill even if they are not used in a war. This is not the only work being done in the United States. Many groups are working across the country to push the abolition agenda forward with legislation, with divestment campaigns, religious efforts. The challenge we're hoping to meet is simply to coordinate efforts so everyone is headed toward the same goal, whether they're doing it with prayer or education or legislation or demonstrations or even direct actions. I believe that the TPNW challenges each of us to change the way we look at the world and the way we look at our work. We stand at a turning point. The message of the ban treaty and the 122 nations that signed it is very clear. We are ready to move from the era of the great nuclear threat, to leave it behind, and to enter the age of the ban treaty. That transition is not complete, but it does not have to be complete to be true. We are now living in the age of the ban treaty. As Beatrice Finn has said, there will only be one treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. We do not have forever to realize the full promise of the treaty. We don't know how long we have. As long as 9 nations have the power to create a nuclear cataclysm that will end life on Earth, we are at risk of running out of time. But there's another clock ticking too. Once upon a time, the Non-Proliferation Treaty was a beacon of hope, but time has worn it down. The failure of the nuclear powers to keep their promise has crushed that hope and also opened the door to the TPNW. We have some years, we don't know how many, to make the TPNW's promise come true. We have to work hard now before the light of this treaty dims, to use the full measure of its power to create the world we want to live in. Finally, I want to say that we recognize that while we are focused on our own government, it is important that we collaborate globally. A number of us in the US have been involved in the Buchel ist überall campaign in Germany, and we are now able to Zoom to places we can't travel to. Actions are taking places in countries across Europe at bases that host the US NATO nuclear weapons, and I'm excited to read on a regular basis that activists are working hard in Asia and Latin America, around the world, to press governments to join the treaty. In the long term, it will take all of us doing all of these things to generate the political will to compel governments to give us a future free of nuclear weapons. The more we connect to each other and collaborate and share resources and ideas, offer encouragement, celebrate our wins, the more we will increase our power and our effectiveness. It's an honor to be here with you and to be your colleague in this critically important work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ralph, for sharing with you not only the situation in the United States and how the anti-nuclear grassroots movement is good and sound and working very well from as far as I know. And as you said, one thing is the TPNW in the countries that don't have nuclear weapons, and something else is for the countries that do host nuclear weapons, or like Spain are under the umbrella, is one of the umbrella states, even though we are not in the same situation as Belgium that they host nuclear weapons, but still, I mean, I think that joining our forces and trying to lobby our governments to sign the treaty, but you know, that in March there will be the first state parties conference in Vienna. So trying to make our governments at least to attend this first meeting. Only last week I came out that Norway, which is a NATO country, is joining the first state parties conference. So that's good news. And let's see if taking the lead of Norway, we can strengthen our views and make our own governments join as well. So thank you very much for sharing all this with us. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker, he's going to use Spanish. Okay, so that for those who need translation into English, have your apps ready with you. I'm going to introduce Mayor Josep Mayoral. Josep Mayoral has been mayor of Granollers, which is a town in the province of Barcelona, since 2004. He has a long career working for the public administration as a mayor, councillor of urban planning, citizen relations, and image and communication of Granollers City Council. Since 2009, he's a member of the Executive Committee of Mayors for Peace and chair of its European chapter and Catalan chapter. He's also currently a member of the International Relations Commission of the Spanish Federation of Municipalities and Provinces and of the World Council of the United Cities and Local Governments. Mayor Mayoral, the floor is yours. Juan Burgos.
Buenos días, gracias por invitarnos y para poder llevar la voz de Mayors for Peace a esta mesa, ¿no? Muchos de ustedes lo sabrán, Mayors for Peace fue creada en el año 83 por el alcalde de Hiroshima con el objetivo central de eliminar las armas nucleares. Esta asociación ha ido creciendo, hoy tiene unos objetivos múltiples, siempre vinculados con el desarme, con la paz, con la dignidad, con la justicia, con todo aquello que hace que este mundo sea profundamente injusto y que genere situaciones de violencia, ¿no? El objetivo inicial, como decía, era precisamente la lucha contra las armas nucleares. Hoy esta asociación tiene ya 8.000 municipios por el mundo que agrupan
I think Spanish interpreters has to mute themselves.
unos 1.500 millones de habitantes.
It's muted. Spanish interpreter's voice.
No sé.
Perdona, no se't sent.
Clar, perquè m'he tret el micro, el que em rebotava.
Ja, i llavors què fa? Però clar, si jo em mute aquí no et sentiran.
Però ell, per exemple, ha parlat i no...
Però ell ha parlat en anglès, no? No hi havia traducció.
Sí, però dic perquè s'escolti. O sigui, a ell se l'escolta des d'aquesta...
Hello, can you hear? Yes. Can you hear me okay? 1, 2, 3, can you
Yes.
hear Mayoral? Is the sound okay now?
Yes, I can now hear the English
Okay.
translation. Yes.
Sorry, there were some problems with the translation. The connectivity wasn't very good. Okay.
Spanish translation. Are you okay now? Are you getting the Spanish translation? Okay, so go, please,
Torna a començar.
sisplau, torna a començar.
Agradecer la invitación
Thanks
para
again.
representar alcaldes por la paz también su PIS aquí. Es
Saying I wanted to thank you for the invitation.
este nivel y con este nivel de debate especialmente, ¿no? Recordar para quien no conoce la organización que Amiés por PIS fue creada en 1983 por el alcalde de
Timely time.
El objetivo principal era la lucha contra las armas nucleares, era la respuesta desde el municipalismo al silencio de los estados.
The main goal was
Los gobiernos locales,
to fight against
¿no?
Interruption all the time.
Yeah, but there's very little I can do from here. I mean, the interpreters are somewhere else. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to handle this.
I think the sound of the interpretation is not good.
You are not,
Not only this.
those of you who are online, you are not getting the Spanish translation, the English translation for what Mayor is saying.
It's spotty.
Rieko,
Yeah, it's really spotty. I don't know.
jumpy, it
Yeah,
jumps.
right, yes. Can you speak again, interpreters?
I'm going to see the technicals.
Carme, parlo més a poc a poc.
És que no crec que es depengui del Justin, em sap molt greu això, de veritat, que si hagi de començar per tercera.
Están preguntando por el... Si se oye el canal de español.
Can you listen? No, el de español.
Decirle que sí que se oye. Sí, sí.
¿Y a quién se lo digo? Porque a mí no me lo pregunta nadie.
Sí, no sé cómo, pero decirle que sí, porque igual cambia, a lo mejor el traductor se pone...
Is the English channel working? Can you hear me on the English?
Rieko.
The English interpretation working?
Yes, I can now
Now you
hear.
can. Okay.
Oh. No. Now the Carmen's voice I cannot hear.
Oh, I'm not muted. Well, let's see. Let's start.
Start again.
Let's start again.
Can
Mayor,
Spanish-
please. No, sembla ser que ara sí, no? It works now.
I don't know. It worked in between.
Okay.
Can I hear the English sound, English voices from the interpreter?
And what are they asking?
Yes, hello. This is the English interpreter on the English channel. Can you hear me? Is this
Now-
okay? Yes, it's okay?
Yes, now I can
Good.
hear.
Okay. So you can speak in Spanish and Catalan, no problem. So I will repeat, okay? Spanish or Catalan, what do you prefer? Spanish? Okay. I was saying that I am delighted to be here sharing this morning with you. And I was presenting the organization Mayors for Peace, created in 1983 by Hiroshima to give a response to the problem of space. The local world sometimes gives an answer to whatever the big states cannot face or manage. It's been a growing organization, growing in members and growing in goals. It's 8,000 members representing 2,500 million people. So it is quite a representative organization. We are also collaborating with the United Nations as consultants with the United Nations.
como lobby para reivindicar el proceso de eliminación de armas nucleares.
For the non-proliferation of nuclear arms treaty, and among our clear objectives, a year and a half ago, Europe created a network about 3,000 cities where we started working together with ICANN in order to involve the European states into a favorable resolution for the non-proliferation of nuclear arms. Let's remember that in Europe we only have 5 countries: Malta, San Marino, the Vatican City, Ireland, and Austria, that have signed this treaty. So our goal, our Cities Together for Peace, have become involved in trying to obtain as many signatures from as many states as possible so that the treaty will be approved, so that it will be ratified. Mayors for Peace, the European Mayors for Peace, is taking action in all countries, as we heard also from our UK representative, who was telling us about the situation there. So this is our mission. Our second mission is to generate European initiatives that will throw light on the situation of nuclear weapons in Europe. On the next event will be taking place on the 21st October, a webinar organized by Mayors of Peace Together with ICANN, where what will be discussed, we will be discussing these matters with the mayors of Hanover, Oslo, the mayor of Glasgow, and we'll also have the active participation of the First Minister External Affairs in Malta. A very complete program. I invite you to join this meeting. I just published the event in the chat box of this Zoom call, so you can see it there. And this is what we're trying to do in order to demand our governments to carry out this work. We have also addressed ourselves to the European Union, to Mr. Josep Borrell, of course. We're trying to establish a dialogue with the European organs and entities, to the Council of Europe and to the Parliament, the European Parliament. We got an answer from Borrell, but not yet from the European Parliament. We will insist. Fourth thing we're doing, to promote in our cities culture of peace, an essential thing to do. The value of peace in our communities. When talking about education for peace, it's not just education in the schools, but it's the whole city that will be able to make this culture of peace grow in every square, in every street, in every home. What is the current situation in Spain? The campaign that we are carrying out together with Fundipau, as about 400 members adhering to it, many of whom are mayors of towns and villages and cities in Spain. So we are first moving and working in these fertile grounds, and then hoping that this will be extensive to the rest of the towns in Spain. We have been focusing first on having a maximum number of city councils joining. We are more than 70 now, but we are mainly trying to have 50% of the total population representing this movement. We have more than half of the population already joining this initiative. So the participation has been extraordinary, which means that we can move on to the next steps, asking the Catalan municipalities to also adhere or to this initiative, to join this initiative, the municipality of Barcelona and many others. And then next, we need to take a leap toward the whole Spanish state. After having done the province work, moving on to the central. After that, we would like to involve the trade unions so that they will take an active part in this. It must be remembered that the Spanish Parliament approved or passed last December a motion where this treaty of no proliferation was welcomed. No parliament has done this. No parliament in Europe has done this before. So this was a big step, and that is a good starting point. So we keep on working as mayors to try to have Spain as an active member in this movement. So we don't only want a hug and a kiss, we want a flower and a signature. The fourth key question for me would be to have the Spanish state as a present state, as an observer in Vienna, to have the Spanish state's presence in Vienna. And we will resort to everything we can think of to have Spain there. The good news is that Norway will be there. That's an open path. Maybe Sweden, probably Sweden as well, and others, but this path is open now. So it will be important to achieve that within the next 3 months, so that the Spanish government will want to be there. So we are mobilized. We are actively working in this network of cities with all the strength of the coalition among cities and civil society movements. So I think this is a long movement. The time that passed between activism was started for the cancellation or prohibition of chemical weapons, the time that passed between that and the time they were actually prohibited was a certain amount of time, and it will be the same here. We'll try to make it as short as possible. We as cities are lucky to govern closely and very close to our beneficiaries, so we'll keep on doing this from our local government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Mayoral, for very encouraging statement about the the activities of the local municipalities and as the head of the Mayors for Peace initiatives. I think local municipalities has a very important role to play because they are the closest to the people. And I think people are working very hard. Also in Japan, we have many local municipalities which have already adopted the resolution to urge the Japanese government to sign the appeal. And this initiative is really similar to the city's appeal of ICANN. And I think it's really spreading not only in Spain or in the United States, but in many countries. I think this kind of grassroots pressure from down below is very effective and very important to really move the central government. And really, it was very encouraging to hear that the Spanish Parliament adopted such motion to urge the government to support the TPNW. And that's what we need to do in Japan too. Yes, I'm just talking about Japan, but so next speaker is from Japan. And thank you very much, Maya Mayorao. And next speaker is from Japan. And Tsuchida Yayoi is the Assistant Secretary General of Gensikyo, the Japan Council Against Atomic and Hydrogen Bombs, which since its founding in 1955 has worked for the prevention of nuclear war, elimination of nuclear weapons, and support for the hibakusha, and has organized the annual conference World Conference Against ANH bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yayoi served as the Vice President of the IPB until 2019 and has represented Gensikyo in many international forums, including the NPT review conferences and the negotiation conference of the TPNW in 2017. So over to you, Yayoi.
It sounds okay. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Japanese movement. In 2022, we will have the NPT review conference in January and the first meeting of state parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in March that are decisively important to determine the future of the abolition of nuclear weapons. Now that humankind is threatened with extinction by nuclear weapons and the danger of use of nuclear weapons is increasing, we have to develop our movement drastically towards these opportunities to open up the prospect of nuclear abolition. Towards these events, we are determined to put ever more pressure on nuclear weapon states and nuclear umbrella states, including Japan, to fulfill the obligations of Article 6 of the NPT and the agreement to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. At the same time, we urge them to face the TPNW seriously as international law and achieve a total ban on nuclear weapons. For this purpose, what should we, peace movements, do? In a new state that nuclear weapons are prohibited by international law, we should increase the effectiveness of the treaty by making governments sign and ratify it in each country. Each additional treaty accession is an opportunity to demonstrate that the international delegitimization of nuclear weapons is getting bigger and clearer, and to strengthen pressure to actually and seriously implement the disarmament obligations to which nuclear weapon states are bound to by the NPT. Let us develop the TPNW campaign in each country, bring the achievements together to these occasions to drive them into corner. In October last year, with the support of a wide range of prominent people in Japan, we started a signature campaign to pressure the Japanese government to sign and ratify that treaty. To make it do so is the responsibility of the Japanese movement. The signature campaign is to build up an overwhelming majority of public support for this aim. While saying that it deeply recognizes the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons more than anyone else, as an able country, and shares the goal of abolition of nuclear weapons, the government opposes the TPNW and does not pressure the nuclear weapon states to implement the agreements of the NPT. It is hindering the realization of the elimination of nuclear weapons. This attitude must be made a complete about face. In that respect, the TPNW empowers us. In talks with the foreign ministry that I participated in the other day, the government said the treaty denies the nuclear umbrella, so we oppose it. It has professed that the lives and property of the people can be protected by the US nuclear umbrella. But what about the reality? In recent years, the US-China hegemonic competition over the South China Sea, East China Sea, and the Taiwan Strait has intensified. Concerns are also growing about North Korea's recent missile development and testing. Japan is taking a dangerous approach to these problems, being a party to the US. In the US-Japan joint statement in April this year, the US stated that it would use all kinds of US capabilities, including nuclear weapons, to provide unwavering support for Japan's defense. And Japan promised to strengthen its defense capability and engage the self-defense forces in the event of a Taiwan emergency. It is clear that if the SDFs join in the US military operations, Okinawa and the Nansei Islands, where the US bases are stationed, will turn into battlefields and culminate in a catastrophic devastation. Reliance on nuclear deterrence only increases the risk of endless arms race, war, and the use of nuclear weapons. The treaty has proposed to the world a shift from security dependent on nuclear deterrence to security in a world free of nuclear weapons. Austria's Ambassador Alexander Clement, who took part in this year's World Conference against A&H bombs, said that the existence of the treaty has led the overwhelming majority of the international community to believe that it is not the right situation for humanity to be in constant danger of annihilation that may occur at any time. This is confirmed by the fact that there is high support for the treaty, even in nuclear weapon states and nuclear umbrella states. In Japan as well, according to an opinion poll in July this year, 71% said that the government should sign and ratify the treaty. And 85% said that the government should participate as an observer in the first meeting of the state parties to the treaty. The Japan Confederation of A&H bomb sufferers organizations, Nihon Hidankyo, a national organization of A-bomb survivors, is also taking the lead in the signature campaign. On July 7th, we posted an advocacy ad on the signature campaign in the Asahi Shimbun, which was viewed by millions of people. And after that, we got 5,000 signatures online. As of October the 14th, local governments which adopted resolutions to urge the Japanese government to sign and ratify the treaty numbered 615, accounting for 34% of the total. If a government that joins the TPNW is established, it will bring about a major shift in Japan's nuclear umbrella and security policy, and will make a major contribution to the abolition of nuclear weapons and peace and security in Japan and Asia. The opportunity is coming up in Japan. It is a general election. Voting date is at the end of this month. We must put an end to the government attitude of going against the abolition of nuclear weapons, make it ratify the treaty, and shift to a politics that ensures peace and security in Japan and Asia. On September the 8th, the 4 opposition parties agreed on a common policy for a new government, which says, aiming to ratify the TPNW, it will make effort to participate in the meeting of state parties as an observer, as a first step. This is a great encouragement for us. If the change of government takes place, it will be a major step forward towards the realization of Japan's accession to the treaty. In order to make this issue an important part of the electioneering, we are strengthening the signature campaign and taking to the streets to appeal for the need of government change. We are determined to attain the shift of Japan's politics with grassroots power and want to contribute to the advance of nuclear abolition toward next year's important opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tsushida Yayoi, for your views on the situation in Japan. Being Japan the country where the first nuclear bombs were dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the leading role that your country plays on focusing and highlighting the humanitarian consequences that any minor small nuclear explosion would have these days would be catastrophic. So we all together as a global movement, we should again pressure our governments, because our audiences, the public support that we have been hearing here from our speakers, that the polls that have been carried out in the different countries proves that there is a major public support for either signing the treaty, like in Japan, you said 71% of the population is for the government to join the TPNW, and 84% for Japan to join the first state parts conference next March. So in European countries, we have also seen that there's a majority of public support for the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. So we should all very clearly state and work towards uncovering the deceit that this nuclear deterrence, which is the major, I would say, excuse that the nuclear countries and particularly the NATO countries are using for keeping being a nuclear alliance, as they say, whereas the Article 6 of the TPN states very clearly that the main work and goal should be nuclear disarmament. So we've got lots of work to do globally, and we'll keep working and trying to make that more and more countries get on board, starting from local to global. So let's put it this way. We are undeterred and we will keep working. Thank you very much. Let me now just explain how the questions will work. I will be managing the first part of the question making from the venue, so from the people here who want to ask questions. And then Rieko in Japan will take over from people in Japan, mainly with Japanese questions, so that she can translate into English. Now, every time someone has a question from the audience, you will allow me that I will need to repeat the question, because if you ask the question and the audience, which is online mainly, can't hear anything, okay? So, and I will ask you to be concise and precise and very direct. If you have the questions directly to any of the speakers, you just say so. Otherwise, we'll see between Rieko and myself who will answer each question. Okay, so any questions from the venue? Yes, okay.
Yes, my question is to the European participants, the member of the European Union. Do you think we can make pressure on our governments? They send observers to the Vienna conference. We have 3 EU countries which have ratified, Ireland and Austria and Cyprus.
No, Malta, Ireland.
Yes, and it can be possible too to have an observer of the European Union. I think they can ask for the diplomacy of the European Union to be an observer at Vienna in the European Union, on the territory of the European Union. And I think we have in all our countries in Europe to make pressure for observers. It would be a first step like our Japanese friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I am Alain Rouy from the French peace movement, le mouvement de la paix.
Welcome.
Karime, I think that's already been translated by the interpreters, so you don't have to.
Yeah, no, it's not translating. It's that the audience who are online apparently can't hear when the audience in the venue are asking questions. I was told that yesterday on a previous, yeah, so I would need to repeat the question very briefly. He's mainly asking to the European representatives here, so to Ludo and the mayor, how from the different European countries we can pressure our governments to take part in the first meeting of state parties in Vienna, and how can we even make the European Union as a body, the European body, be present in that conference. So I will allow either Meya, Mayoral, or Ludo to answer the question. Okay, so that yours is the floor. The floor is yours.
Desde Alcaldes por la Paz.
From Mayors for Peace, we've had to make a formal request to the representatives of the European Union and to the President of the European Parliament.
I'll translate because apparently the interpreters are not translating the answers. The Mayor Mayoral is saying that he commits himself to make the petition to the European Union representative, Josep Borrell, to attend the first member state parties conference in Vienna. Ludo, would you like to add anything else?
Yeah, I want to say,
European countries.
I know there's from the Greens, I think, and maybe other fractions, there have been questions posed to have Europe as a regional observer, which is according to Article 8 in TPNW, that the regional bodies can also be an observer in the. And what concerning the national parliaments, I think what we are in touch with certain parliament because the Greens and the Social Democrats are in it. So these are the parties we are a little bit closer with. We can communicate. And what we hear, so their position was like, we need one of the NATO countries to take the first step to be an observer. Now we have Norway, so now we can interpel them, and because they are in government, so we can say no. This is the first step. So it's possible that Belgium will do the same. I think seeing the spirit inside the government, seeing the government declaration, and I hear rumors that even Germany is discussing it as well. So, but now there's a coalition. I don't know. It's a new government, so I don't know how they will decide. But with the Social Democrats in charge, it seems and the Greens, yes. And so I think it can be part of this. So, and this would be a first step. This means the 3 NATO countries would be observer. It's the first step, observer. And this is symbolically because this breaches, this this is NATO pressure and US pressure, even undermining, stating that it's undermining the NPT and whatever, it's against everything NATO stands for. This means symbolically that these countries do not totally agree with this position. So this is important, I think.
Okay, Rieko, there's another question from the, or two more questions from the room. And maybe I shall take these two questions and then I'll pass on to you. Is that correct?
Okay,
Right.
yes.
So I'm Manfred Mohr, I'm from Jalana, Germany. And I raised the question in the chat. I don't know whether you refer to the chat as well.
How does the Christian Democrat, is that your question?
No.
Ah, okay.
It's a general question I put in the chat.
Oh, Carmen,
there.
yes.
There you can see it.
We need to shorten.
general
Oh no,
question.
gosh, sorry.
The general question, what other instruments or legal arguments do you see to support our campaign apart from the TPNW?
It's not.
It is, but it's mine anyway. May I repeat?
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
You've got it.
I've got it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but they should. I should repeat your question for them.
Yes, but I have it in the chat.
Yeah.
I heard it. I think we heard it. Okay.
Okay.
Everybody
Well, Dave has his hand raised, so probably he would like to answer the question. Shall I allow? You want to say
No,
something?
I have something to say about
Okay.
it.
May I
But
say
Dave,
one more sentence, please? In the background, asking for other instruments apart from the TPNW is that, from my point of view, also in this room and also in our campaign, we are focusing on the TPNW ratification, etc., which is good. This is one tool to get to a nuclear weapons-free world, but that's the only tool. The risky thing being, if we only focus on the TPNW, we lose all other legal arguments like IHL, human rights law, environmental law we already have. And then the mayor comes in and says, okay, we have to wait for some more decades to come and we reach a nuclear weapons prohibition like the chemical weapons. So do we have to wait that long? Or as Richard says, in nuclear weapons states, we only have moral arguments. I think we also have legal arguments. So just see the complex picture.
Okay, so Ludo is going to say something about this question, and then Dave, you've lowered your hand. Okay,
I'll keep it up. Yeah.
Okay, so after Ludo, I'll give the floor to you. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
well, a few words to that. I mean, first, there are many instruments, and you're right. We should use every possibility means to pressure. And I think one, at least in Belgium also, I think it was mentioned in one of the sessions this weekend. It's the report "Don't Bank on the Bomb," and I think the new report will soon coming out, which is listing up the banks that are investing in nuclear production. And at least we used it in the former, the former reports. We even translated it into Dutch and made it more profound concerning the Belgian banks. And the result was that two banks, they feel denounced, it's blame and shame because they want to be ethical banks more and more. And so they announced they will the withdrawal, the divestment of nuclear production. And one of the banks is one of the main banks, KBC. It's in Belgium a very important bank. And they even refer to the TPNW because we said, there is a TPNW, nuclear arms become illegal. So, and it will also limit your possibilities investing in other countries, if you, whatever. And so it's a way of pressuring. It's like not only governments, it's like, and I think the city, what we did, like every year we asked the cities or the municipalities to join a call to sign the TPNW. I think it's almost 1/4 of all the Belgian municipalities that support it, and it's over the political borders. So even mayors from parties that are in the government against this withdrawal of nuclear arms or signing that TPNW on local level with support. So, and hopefully, if more mayors of those parties will join on local level our calls, this can maybe also inside these parties pressure their position. And the last thing I think is it's maybe a legal matter, but the NPT, and this is concerning the nuclear sharing countries, the NPT prohibits the participation, control, whatever, of nuclear arms. And this is the case, you know, for example, they're doing these maneuvers, like now we had a demonstration last week, I joined in Germany, Nürnberg, when steadfast noon, they are exercising it, which is clearly, you know, preparing using nuclear arms by those countries in breach with NPT. The only problem is that we are pressuring now the government to declare officially that there are nuclear arms on our soil. Once it's officially recognized, we have legal means to challenge them according to the NPT. You know, because as long as they do not admit, it's a problem. So, but at least this is something I think in the sharing country should be done. That because it's in every country is like this. These bombs are secretly, it's an open secret, but no government of the sharing countries admits that there are. They say also confirm nor deny, and this is by purpose. This is to block any political debate. This is by purpose to avoid this kind of legal challenges. And so we're trying now to look if you know, if your nuclear centrals, you know, nuclear energy. They have all security plans in case there is something happening, like in Fukushima. I don't believe that it will happen anyhow, but there's, you know, there's a security plan. And that's why we say there are nuclear bombs. If there are nuclear bombs in the military base in Belgium, is there any security plan? You know, it doesn't. So it touches our security, it touches our interest as a citizen. So we are now looking if we can go to court, whatever, to address that, you know, that we want to know if there are nuclear bombs, then, you know, we need a security plan, so you have to admit it. This is something, well, these are a few examples.
Dave, to you.
Yes. Yeah, okay, thank you.
A ti, Dave. Sí, gracias.
Okay, what Ludo has said is very important. And we've done similar things in the UK, tried similar things about de-investing from nuclear weapons and saying, look, these are going to be illegal soon. Well, they are illegal now, but they're going to be illegal in this country soon. So, you know, this is a waste of investment. And sometimes that does ring bells and does have some effect. Also, not just banks, but pensions and so on, where a lot of money is being invested in these things. So I just wanted to say, I put in the chat a link to the legal opinion that CND commissioned about about the UK breaking the NPT treaty. And that's a really interesting report. It only covers specific questions raised by that, by what Boris Johnson had done in terms of raising the cap on the number of nuclear weapons. But I think it's a very important thing. And it shows that there are a number of existing laws that really we break as well as the NPT. There's lots of humanitarian laws, legal commitments that the UK has under various agreements. I can't name them all offhand, but there's quite a few. And also there are environmental laws as well, international environmental laws that prohibit, you know, excessive devastation to the environment. And these laws and agreements also cover threats in many cases, not just the actual action of doing it. So I think there's a number of occasions. Also, I think I have had the advantage of seeing a paper by Amala Skiljan, who was working for the IPB at one time, and she's done a really extensive look at all of the legal obligations under humanitarian and other laws in a paper called Are Nuclear Weapons Illegal? I think she submitted it for publication, and it would be fantastic to have that as a resource if IPB could somehow or other arrange that. I know she's doing a PhD at the moment, She won't probably want to do it herself, but maybe somebody could take that on. It's a really good, very useful resource. Okay, thanks.
Rieko, Sean has just come in telling me we've got 2 minutes before closing the session because the plenary needs to start on time. So shall we take a question from your end and then we close the session?
Right,
okay,
yes.
Very quick, very quick.
Yeah, very quick. I think there are 2 questions, but one was directed to Ludo, asking how the Christian Democrats in Belgium can go against the appeal of the Pope for the abolition of nuclear weapons. And the other one is about is there any illegal documents or instruments we can see to support our campaign apart from the TPNW? So anyone, if anyone can answer these questions. The first one is to Ludo, but the other one.
Yeah, we have only 2 minutes, so very fast. I think it's about the Pope in Nagasaki telling in 2019, I think, that it's indefendable and even perverse, I think he used the word, to have nuclear arms. Well, the Christian Democrats who are in government, to give an example, the former Minister of Defense, until 2014, he was the most transatlantic and NATO lover of, he agreed to become NATO Secretary General. So just to say, he was a Christian Democrat. No, it is not at all an issue. But it's true, we should maybe more talk to them in this sense, you know, if you're a Christian Democrat. So listen to the Pope, please.
What do I want to do?
Yeah, or change the name of your party.
Exactly. Okay, and the second question, Diego.
Yes, does, is there anyone who can raise any or any legal
of the
documents?
panelists?
Yeah.
It's my question.
Well, then maybe we should just finish.
Okay, finish.
Yeah,
And I think we
keep it up.
yes, we need to ask each panelist to just have 30 seconds to say the closing. Yes, because there are some people who didn't answer any questions. So can we ask Kim Jin-yeon to make the last appeal?
At the workshops like this one, I feel that the situation in Korea is somewhat different from other countries here because the anti-nuclear movement is very weak. So that's why I'm sorry I cannot tell you a lot of hopeful stories at the today's workshop. But as I said in the presentation, it's not hopeless. If you are with Korean citizens who want peace, the hope will grow even more. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So Ralph, please.
Thank you. I would just say it's really inspiring to hear all the activities that are going on around the world and to be a part of this collaboration. I think the more that we can strengthen the collaboration, the closer we'll come to succeeding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now, Dave, just one word.
One word? Peace. No, I think, sorry, I think it's really important to just keep on. And I know that we all have different environments in which we're working. Even in one country, we have different places where things are different. So we just have to generate our own energy, generate our own power, but join internationally because we are a massive movement and we can do this thing.
Thank you very much. So Meya Mayoral, just one sentence, closing.
Trabajar en red para...
Working as a network in order to make what seems impossible possible, to render it possible.
Thank you very much. Ludo, 2 words.
Yeah, I said already, but well, I think we succeeded already making a few steps, and I'm very optimistic that the movement against nuclear arms will enlarge. I'm optimistic in that. So, and we'll see in a few years if this will happen. But we have to work for it.
Well, that will be too long.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Yayoi, you're the last.
sorry. I want to say that now is the time to put an end to nuclear deterrence, security by nuclear deterrence. The existence of nuclear weapons, existence of the treaty, TPNW, made the nuclear deterrence theory lose ground. Substantially, it has come to an end, but it looks still alive and powerful because the nuclear powers and nuclear umbrella states are sticking to it. But they are minority, we are the majority. 130 countries support the TPNW. So we focus on the struggle in each country, but as our friends said, let's work together and let's see next year in the important meetings of NPT and the first meeting of TPNW. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yayoi, very much. I think your concluding remarks is the concluding remark for this workshop. Yes, thank you very much. So thank you very much for all the panelists and all the staff people, interpreters, and the helpers on our technological side. So you are great help. Without you, how can we have this workshop? Thank you
You are
very much.
absolutely right.
Thank
We
you very
appreciate
much for all
it.
the people who joined. Thank you. Harume?
Yes. No, I just want to say thank you to all of you for your patience. We were late in beginning. For the public, also being patient for the interpretation, technical problems, and I think it's been successful. We've gathered lots of positive energy from this workshop, I think. So I hope we'll see each other soon. Goodbye.